Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to go through my build for the 3-ply mice nuclear winter build. For this I started with a Matchbox Snow Trac. I've had this casting for a while and I kind of like the idea of making it into some kind of tank. Something similar to like an anti-tank vehicle from World War II. So I went through my bits box, picked up this cannon, which was the auto-kill cannon from the Mad Scientist sprue. But I wanted to make it look like it was mounted inside the cab, so I cut it down first. And then glued it over the windshield, just because I wasn't going to put an interior on this. It doesn't really have one already, and I just didn't want to model an interior because I'm going to do a bit of armour on top of it. So I'd run out of green stuff at this point, and since I was building this kind of around the holidays, I didn't really want to wait around for more green stuff to arrive, or never arriving. So I just used some super glue for filler here. Next, similar to World War II vehicles, I wanted to make some armour skirts. These are like metal panels that kind of absorb the hit. It acts like more armour that you can just usually bolt on. It was usually bolted on late in the war, just to up armour old vehicles that weren't as armoured as some of the new stuff. So using this mesh material that I traced around the snow track just to kind of get a rough shape, and then just kind of made modifications to make it look a bit more suitable. The idea is I'm going to add bits of car to this to make it look like it's made out of junk. This is going to be because obviously it's for some look junk made, but also act as kind of urban camouflage, which we'll go on to a bit later on. So I decided to use some square styrene rod just to hold the armour in place. At this point I felt the back lacked a bit of detail, so I took these two exhausts from the North Star military figures implements of Carnage sprue and added them on the back. Plus it kind of adds to the World War II tank theme because a lot of old tanks used to have like exhausts like this. I did want to put a fuel tank there, but I just felt it kind of ruined it, and it was probably a weak point because it'd be easy just to hit a fuel tank. So back to the armour skirts. Like I said, I wanted to build these to make them look like they're made out of junk. So I cut up some zero cars from a bits box, and this just used the door panels, the hoods and the wings. The idea is this was a military vehicle that they just wanted to add more armour to, and they just built it with whatever they could find in the wasteland. This is also where the camouflage part of it's going to come into it. So basically if it was parked in the middle of the street, it would look like an improvised roadblock or a barricade that was just set up in the middle of the night, which I presume if you were in an apocalyptic war zone in an urban environment, there'd be barricades popping up every now and then getting destroyed. So they'd probably be hastily made, which kind of suits the idea of this being camouflage. So someone would just see this as, oh, someone's built a roadblock, and not realise there's a tank there. At least that's the idea anyway. So at this point I decided to add a hat. I'm using sprue cutters to cut the pin off here. I would recommend, if you're going to do it yourself, to use an old pair because this will damage the sprue cutters doing this. So we have the completed build before the paint. As you can see, the skirts are a bit lacking. I didn't want to add too much because I kind of also wanted the ability for the people inside to be able to see through them, but now looking at it, I kind of feel like it needs more armour bolted on top of it to be made somewhat more realistic. So I just did this off camera before painting. Moving on, I decided with a base coat of white because I was going to go with a white camo pattern scheme for this paint job. Next I used some grey paint and just kind of blocked in some kind of camo pattern off the top of my head. So while that was drying, I decided to move on to the Yarmouth Skirts, which I just hit with a base rust colour. Followed by dry brushing of silver and then just dry brushing individual colours onto the different body panels. Moving back to the Snow Trac, I painted the underside a dark grey. I figured with the armoured skirts on the side, you won't really see the inside, the track detail, as there's not really too much point in painting too much detail there. After that, I then painted the cannon and exhaust in a steel colour. Going back, I decided I'd paint the wheels white just because I figured they'd stick out at the bottom, and obviously this is going to be in a snowy environment. It'd be easy to camouflage them if they were made white, so I just went back and painted the wheels white. So at this point I went back to the armoured skirts and set dry brush on some orange just over the top part, just to show that it's still kind of actively rusting away, and it's just, you know, a much patch of rusty old parts that they found and just bolted on for extra armour. Next I moved on to the tracks and just dry brushed on some silver paint. I didn't feel I could do too much because they're made of rubber and they're moving parts, and so the paint would just constantly flake off. But I didn't want to just leave them plain white, so I just decided to dry brush some silver on, so the patches of white look like snow that's like kind of stuck to the tracks. Finally I finished the whole build off with a nice black wash just to kind of add dirt to places and just to highlight those detailed panels and such. Here we are with the finished build. Now I did initially plan to dry brush on some white paint just to kind of act like snow and frost that's set in, but I didn't want to do this because it felt it would be permanent, and when I get around to animating this thing I'd probably want to repaint it. Also when I got into the Glamour Shots I'd have to dry brush on some white paint onto all my scenery and other bits and pieces that I took pictures of, and I didn't want to do something that permanent and then have to go back and repaint a lot of things. But I did come up with an idea using baking soda, and you'll see in the Glamour Shots it actually turned out quite well. Overall I thought it was a really good build, although I do wish I could have done more with the tracks, but being as they're rubber and moving parts I wasn't too sure what I could do to them, which wouldn't just be rubbed off with me using this in some future animations and such, so I can't be, as far as I know, do anything else with that. As usual, there'll be a nice little slideshow of Glamour Shots at the end. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.